So, you want to make movies. Okay, let's talk about that. In the amateur world out there, Adobe Creative Cloud has become kind of standard, and Adobe Creative Cloud have two applications to work with movie creation. It's Adobe Premiere Pro and it's Adobe After Effects. Premiere Pro is really good if you have like big movie clips, big film material, and when you want to splice out things and edit them together to new nicer things, then that makes a lot of sense. But when you want to create something from scratch with animations and infographics and stuff like that, After Effects make a lot more sense. With the work I'm doing for the last couple of years, I found that I don't even go into Premiere anymore. I stay in After Effects. So let's take a look at that application, which is my favorite. So first thing you need to do when creating something new is create a project. So at this splash open screen here, you can either click New Project or New Team Project. Now there's a big difference between these two. New Project creates something that is on your hard drive, a project file, and then you link to that and you work in it. The problem is that you build a silo around yourself. You can't invite anyone else to work with you, and it's harder to integrate with, say, Premiere Pro if you want to use the material you create here in the other application. If you use New Team Project, you can have people all over the world working together, and you can really smoothly bring stuff between Premiere and After Effects and vice versa. So it's unfortunately not as good as Git when it comes to having version control and going back to previous versions and stuff. This is something that Adobe could really work on, I think. But it's my favorite to work with nonetheless. So we'll open a new team project. We'll give it a name and say Hello Movie Creator. And start it. Okay, we have a blank screen. Nothing is here. So the first thing we need to do when working in After Effects is to look at a composition. You see, that's a big nice button there. So in general, when you work inside the editing environment, you don't have this start screen, but rather you have these tiles here. So you have this nice little button here with the colorful thing called Create a New Composition. So let's click that. Here are a few things we need to look at. So we can just name it something nice, my first video, and take a look at the settings. So 1920 through 1080 pixels, that's standard full HD, good. Square pixels, important. Frame rate, I like to work in this 23,976 because it gives something that works kind of everywhere. It's just trust me, it's good to use. Then you have duration. This sets how long your composition will be. So the first here, we have hours, then you have minutes, then you have seconds, then you have frames. So we'll take 0 minutes, we'll take 30 seconds, and click OK. Now we will create a composition, and this is where we do our work inside. OK, some progress. You see our composition here in the library, you see black. And let's jump into one important thing before we do anything else. We work with folders. So we create a folder called Compositions. You see what I did here? I right-clicked here, I selected New Folder, and let's create one for stock videos, because we'll be throwing in a couple of those. And maybe a folder for bitmaps. Let's get a few of those too. And then we just drag my first video into Compositions. And now it's neat and tidy. And every time we do something significant in a Teams project, we click this little bugger here, share my changes to the Teams project server. Boom. This means that your work is saved in the cloud. You move to another computer and you have the content folder, you can still keep working. So there's not much going on here yet. So we can see here now in my first video, it's completely empty, as it should be. And this is where we keep control of things, and this is the timeline. So let's create a new layer. Create a new shape layer. because there we can draw shapes, obviously. And something is happening now. Now you can see that we have a blue bar that stretches all throughout the timeline. This blue bar here signifies when this is visible. So if I do like this and drag the start to 4 seconds, and I drag the ends to 8 seconds, it will only be visible between these two timings. But for now, let's keep it all over the place. So in this shape layer, we can draw shapes. So let's click the square icon here, rectangle tool, and just draw a square. Looks nice, right? So a couple of things here that we want to look at right away. So there's a few panels that you want to open here on your right side. So properties and align are great to have. Effects is great to have. And here in window, you can choose the ones that you want to have visible. Okay? Now, working in After Effects is a lot about working with how things change. And we define how things change with properties and with keyframes. So, for instance, one property is position. And position you control with the hotkey P. See? Now this changed into only showing the position of the object. If I drag this one here, you see I left click on it and I drag left and right. That's how you change things in Adobe. It moves to left and right. If I hold my left button down on this one and drag it back and forth, you see the vertical property change. Okay, so let's make this move about then. We'll have it start over here, and then we'll set a keyframe. Now a keyframe defines what property something has at a certain time. And if you have two keyframes, After Effects will calculate how to gradually change from one state to the other and automatically do it for you. So I'll put a keyframe here by clicking the stopwatch. Boom. And now you see very importantly, this little blue dot here shows up. Okay. So then we just drag away for 2 seconds. And if I now drag the property for horizontal alignment away, you kind of see what's going on here, right? So a few things happen now. One, you see this blue dotted line between that signifies that an animation is happening. You see a new diamond turned up in the timeline, indicating that we have a new keyframe. And you see that we have a new blue dot here, meaning that when the timer is here, we are at a keyframe. So if we move about here, see this? We go from 0 to 2 and the things move. And when we are at the right frame, the blue diamond lights up. So let's zoom in a bit. And we do that by clicking on this big mountain here. Scroll back to the right place. And press space to preview. And it moves. Not very sexy, but it does. Okay, now we drag a square here in the timeline and do both. And we click F9. Now, what's this called is easy in and easy out. Ease in, ease out. So you see that you get a new shape on these keyframe indicators. But when we click here now, you see we get a smoother animation. Let's speed it up a bit. So, oops, sorry, Control Z to regret. Click here so I only select one keyframe and drag this one back here so it's faster. You see that it doesn't just mechanically move, but it rather accelerates and decelerates to give a more natural animation. So this was the property P, very important hotkey. Also, and next thing important to do is, if we click on a layer, press enter, we can rename it. And then we make a nice name, my first square. Okay, so now when we are at this second point here, let's try out another keyframe. Let's scale this. Then we press S. Okay, now you see that the diamonds disappeared. Don't panic, it's just because it's only showing the scale property now. So let's create a keyframe for scale here. But now I think I can only see one thing now. I'm annoyed. So then you press U, and voila, you see all the active keyframed properties at the same time, which is very useful. The U key you use a lot when working with After Effects. Okay, so now we have this scale here. We move another half second. So about 24 frames is 1 second. And then we scale it down to like this. And then we can scale it back up. And then we do the same thing. We drag a square around these, press F9, and we get to the more accelerating, decelerating thing. So let's see what our square does now. It moves about and it bounces. And then we can give it a bit more life. So say that we go in the middle of these two. At the end, it's 128%. Let's make it a bit more bouncy. So we drag here up to 146%. And then we get something you see, whump, flashes up on the screen, okay? So now we looked at the P hotkey for precision. We looked at the S hotkey for scale. Now we press R for rotation. Once again, we only see the active property for the hotkey we pressed. The rest is hidden. We start the hotkey. We start a keyframe, sorry. And then we press U to get everything visible. And now we can move it over here a bit, the timeline, and rotate our little square. Mark it and press F9. And we press space. Nice, huh? So let's take a look at the next property, which is opacity. The hotkey O was taken, so they used the hotkey T, which, I mean, could guess transparency, I guess. So we press T, and we get the opacity. We start a keyframe, we press U, so we get everything up. Go ahead a little bit, and reduce the opacity to 0 to fade our little rectangle square out. F9. And there we have it. Position with P. Scale with S. Rotation with R. And opacity with T. Here you have covered a lot of important things. We've only worked with one layer so far, but these properties will help you do a lot of the stuff that you want to do. But let's make it more interesting. Let's insert a background video. So we go into our project folder. We take a video. And yeah, this is worth mentioning actually. When working with a video project like this, always create a project, preferably in the cloud. I like to use OneDrive because then you can share across to Apple as well. You go into, and then you create a folder in that you called assets. And under that you group your things. You have animations at one place, audio at one place, bitmaps at one place, videos at one place. Because if you keep this structure all the time and keep everything you use in the project in this folder, everything you use in the Adobe folder structure that you keep in reality on your hard drive in a similar folder structure, then it's very easy to migrate projects and for people to cooperate. If you just download something to your download folder and then link to that directly from your Adobe folder structure, then someone else helping out with your animation, they won't have that in their downloads folder, so you will get an error that you're missing content. But if you're using a structured folder structure like this and keep everything organized and contained in one place, then everyone can cooperate in a good way. So let's go ahead and add a video. Let's add an ocean to our stock videos. Okay? Nothing happened as such, but if you click the little arrow, you can see the stock video is here. So let's drag that in. We drag it here. Oh no, square disappeared. No worries, we put it under the square. And we try to press. Cool, huh? So these two things actually work together. So say that you click here, so you are at the right layer, and then you right click out here on the edge, and you take new, you take shape layer, then you can take circle. You see I held down my left button on that shape tool, get ellipse tool, and I hold down shift to get a perfectly round ellipse. I draw it out like this. In my align panel, I click horizontal alignment and vertical alignment. And we see something's off, right? This thing here is the center of gravity for the shape. And this is important. You control that with this tool here called Pan Behind Anchor Point. Okay, so then we just now we click and drag, we hold down Control when we left click this thing, and this will help us. See, now it gives us the exact middle of the shape. And this gives us the exact bottom of the shape. So let me show you the difference. If I put it here, when I left click, I get my normal tool back. I left click on the shape layer, I click on S for scale. If I scale it down now, it scales like that, around the dead center, okay? Go back to where we were. And now we move the gravitation point down here. Now look what happens when we scale it here. Now it gravitates towards the bottom. Okay? And this is very important when you work with scaling and rotation, because it will rotate around this point and it will scale towards that point. So if this point, gravitation point, is at the wrong place, your rotation and scaling will be all screwy. And this is a super common newbie mistake. Okay? So why did I draw this circle on here? Let me show you. I'll put this here. I'll keep this aligned perfectly to the middle. And now we can take, in here, you see you have a menu called No Matte. And if you don't see this, it's fine. You can bring it out. In columns, you can activate the things that you need. So modes, parents and links and switches, you want all of these activated, okay? Let's take this circle and use it as a mask for the movie. So here we select Track Matte, EV Mask. Okay. And now we'll zoom out a little by clicking on Little Mountain. Take a nice time. software hung a little. And we'll put a keyframe here on the scale on the mask. And over the course of 2 seconds, we will scale this up. So we go back, we press play, and you see that we get a kind of a cool looking fade. And this is very important, how these layers interact with each other. So looking here, you can see that top to bottom, bottom to top means the order things are visible. The ocean video at the bottom, then our moving square, and then we have the mask. So let's do something else here. Let's put some text. This is a video. We center align it. And we see it. This doesn't look too good. You don't have really any contrast in between the text and video. This is a common problem, but we can fix that. So in this effect set here, you look for exposure, and you drag that on top of the video, and now you get this panel here. Don't worry, you still have the team project over here to the left, and here you have this. And now we can reduce the exposure of the video, and now it's a lot easier to read. And if you want the video to be more diffuse, we can select a nice Gaussian blur. Drag that on top of the video. And increase the blurriness. Nice, right? So let's take a look now. You see it's lagging a bit, right? That means that this green line here is computing all the frames in my video. And that sometimes takes a bit of time. So especially when you're using audio playback, you will hear it going down to whale speak when trying to work with that. But that's natural. Okay. So this is it. We have our square. We press U to see our properties. And now I can see all of these things together. So you see the position. You see the scale. Rotation. And a fade out using opacity. And the text layer on top. And how all of these things work together. Now when you've done all this, you can click up on File, Export, Add to Render Queue. You get down here, yada yada yada. You don't really need to touch this, but Output to is a nice thing to do. And here you have my first video. You click Save, you click Render, and the thing gets going. And that's it. That's the basic starts of using Adobe After Effects. All of these things have a ton of more detailed YouTube tutorials available across the place, so feel free to start digging into those. But best of luck.